Good evening. Welcome to Haver Park's Financial Aid Night. My name is Joe Plants. I'm one of the school counselors alongside with Tara Arsenal, another school counselor. We have Alicia Furlong here from Siena College. She's the Assistant Director of Financial Aid. She'll be walking us through the FAFSA information, taking questions at the end of our program for any financial aid questions you may have. So welcome. This is the first time we're doing it live stream. Sit back and enjoy, and welcome, Alicia.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me. We love doing these things at high schools because, financial aid is one of those topics that you don't just automatically know about it, right? So it's something that the more information you can receive from any source you can, the better off you will be. We know that this is probably a big, scary part of the college process, so we're here to help give you some guidance, some tips, things to look for, some general timeline information, so you kind of have an idea of what you should be doing now, what you can be doing, and what to expect throughout the college application process. So I have a couple things I'll go over in a slide, and then certainly if you have any questions, type them in the chat, and we can get to those at the end. And then we'll see if we can tackle most of the topics together, but certainly if at any point you need any additional information or you want to just talk privately, I'm always available, even if it's not Siena specific. So feel free to email me. My email is just my first initial, my last name, so afurlong@siena.edu. And I'd be happy to help with any parts of the process that you have, even, again, not Siena specific, anything, okay? So what is financial aid? Financial aid means a lot of different things. It could be loans, it could be scholarships, it could be grants. It comes in different forms, it comes from different sources. So the main thing is for you to understand, you want to find as much financial aid as you can, right? No one should think to themselves, I don't need any financial aid, or I won't qualify for financial aid. Chances are you will qualify for some. So one of the myths that we feel is out there is that you're not going to be able to afford the college, because if you look at the price of the college on their website or on documentation that they provide, the top price might be a little scary, might be something that you're not able to afford. But majority of students receive some sort of financial aid. So what we want you to do is kind of dive into it a little bit deeper, give yourself a chance to find out what that college is offering with regards to financial aid. One of the best ways to find out if you're eligible for financial aid and get as much as you can is something called the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is a free application for federal student aid. So it's a federal document, it's online, it's something that you can complete as a student and a parent together, and it's very important. If you learn nothing else from this, we hope that you learn to take away from this that you should do the FAFSA. It is actually very quick, it's very easy, and it's very important. So a couple things come from the FAFSA. You might get federal aid, you might get New York State aid, and you might get college aid. This is a very big tool that is used from all of those places to be able to offer you as much as possible. The FAFSA itself is available at fafsa.gov. It is not available right now. Typically, it opens up in the month of October of the senior year. However, there was a change to it last year, and they're still changing a little bit of it this year. So they have delayed it a little bit longer. So most likely it'll be available sometime in December. You'll hear about it a lot. You'll hear about it in the news if you're interested. Most of the schools you apply to will communicate this to you as well. So when you start going through the process of applying to colleges, this will be talked about many times by most of the colleges. To get started, you do need to create an FSA ID. This is not something you would have already as a student. It's not related to the SATs, that's a different one. If you're a parent and you have other students in college and you've already done a FAFSA, then you do already have an FSA ID. So you don't need to create a new one. As a parent, you're going to use the same one that you've used for all of your other children. But as a student, you have to create an ID for yourself. That can also be done at fafsa.gov, and that actually can be done now. So it's a really good thing to look into soon, because you can kind of get started with that process, get yourself set up, get that active. Takes a few days, if not a week or so, to get yourself to be active. That way, when it does become available in December, maybe don't be the first people to jump on it. Last year that kind of backfired, but maybe a couple weeks when it's available in December, you can start the process. Okay, And one thing that doesn't maybe seem as obvious, but it's going to use your 2023 income tax information. So you want to have that information with you. We'll talk more about that. There are other applications for financial aid. Some might be the college's applications. They might have their own version. So any college that you're interested in, you want to make sure that you reach out either on their website or by calling, talk to their admissions office, and find out exactly what options you have to be able to receive as much aid as possible. They might have their own version of some sort of application. This year, for example, Siena is making their own FAFSA version for nothing, just trying to get the information out there sooner, trying to get it so that students can fill it out sooner and not necessarily wait for the FAFSA in December. You'll still need to do the FAFSA in December or January, but it's something that we might start doing ahead of time just to get that information out sooner. So check with every one of the colleges that you're interested in and see if they have something like that. But also there's this other big one out there called the CSS profile. This is not a federal form, it's not a state form. It's through the College Board, so this one is related to the SAT login. So if the student already has a user ID for that, they'll use that user ID and they can go into the CSS profile and complete that one as well. Now, the FAFSA is really used and required by the majority of colleges, if not all of them. CSS profile is not. It's not as widely used. So you don't want to do the CSS profile if you don't have to. It is longer, harder, more questions than the FAFSA, and it also is not free. So what I would suggest is you either look at each college's website and see if they require or use the CSS profile. And if they don't, then don't do it. If one of your colleges requires it and the other 5, 6, 7 don't, just do it for that one college because they do charge you per college. Another resource for you is CSS profile website. So you can log in, you can Google CSS profile. It'll bring you to the application page and also have a screen where you can look and see what schools, what colleges require it, whether they require it for domestic students, so that would be more US citizens, or if they only require it for international students. Sometimes the CSS profile is used by colleges for international students because they are not able to do the FAFSA. So some colleges might not require it for everybody. So take a look at that. Don't miss out on it, but also don't necessarily do it unless you actually have to. There are different deadlines for the CSS profile. It is actually available now, so you could look into it. And again, each college might have their own deadline. So make sure that you're paying attention to getting as much financial aid as you possibly can from each college, following their own individual guidelines. Again, no one can require the FAFSA right now, but they might have some deadlines they're trying to have you meet as that becomes available. So keep an eye out for that per college. Okay, so if you've done the FAFSA before, this past school year, it was brand new. They revised a lot of it. Won't focus on this too much because you may never have done the FAFSA before and it doesn't mean anything to you. But some important things to point out. The result of the FAFSA is called a Student Aid Index. You might hear it also called an SAI. In the past, it was called an EFC, Expected Family Contribution. Luckily, they changed that. Student Aid Index is a little more clear to explain that it's an index. It's something that then the government is going to use to determine if you're eligible for financial aid. Colleges are going to use that Student Aid Index and determine if you're eligible for financial aid. So that's what happens after all the information is put in. That's the new term that you might hear a lot about, Student Aid Index. It means the results of the FAFSA. There are less questions. Before it was over 100, now there's 36, and honestly, you're going to be able to answer all of them without too much trouble. Even the financial part is pretty easy because it pulls a lot of it from the IRS. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Another new term this year is contributor. So parent basically now is called a contributor. We'll talk about more about that too. Number in college is treated a little differently this year. If you've gone through the FAFSA before, it doesn't necessarily acknowledge whether you have other children in college, but there's ways around that too. So these are some of the major changes, and then it now uses business information that didn't use before. Okay, so, sorry. Like I said, first thing to do for completing the FAFSA is creating this FSA ID. It's very important. It's a good thing to start doing it now. Now, the one thing I did say was the student has to have their own FSA ID. The parent may or may not need an FSA ID. So you're asking right now, you're thinking, well, then how do we know what we're supposed to do? So every parent can go ahead and create an FSA ID. It's not going to hurt anything, even if you are eventually not using it. An FSA ID is free. It doesn't hurt anything. So the student and the parents can start working on that now. Which parent goes in the FAFSA is a intricate kind of detail this year. So what they did is they created a bunch of questions that the student will answer. As the student answers those questions, it will help the student figure out if they are a dependent student for FAFSA purposes or an independent student. If they are a dependent student, then they're going to want to know information about the parents. The student is going to be asked questions about the parents. So, are your parents married to each other? If the answer is yes, it's going to take you down a few other questions. If you say no, it's going to ask different questions. So it's become more interactive to help you figure out what all the next steps are. As you answer those questions as a student, it's going to help you figure out which parent, if you have different situations where somebody might be separated or divorced, it's going to help you figure out which parent goes in the FAFSA. One of the main things is related to also how they filed their tax returns in 2023. So 2023 is the year in question for seniors in high school right now. That's going to be the income tax year that they're using. And what they want you to do as a parent is they want you to give consent to go to the IRS and pull that information for you. Same thing with the student if the student has filed tax returns as well. That is actually a good thing. It's a new thing. It's easier. It's going to pull all that information. You won't have to enter a lot of it manually. It is much easier. So you're answering the questions as a student, figuring out who your parent is. As you're going through that process and you figure out who the parent is or multiple parents, then what's going to ask the student to do is invite the contributor to also participate in the FAFSA. At this point, the student can finish answering their questions about themselves, sign off on it, and be done. The contributor has been sent an email. They'll log in with their FSA ID, and they'll answer their questions. If it's one parent and that parent is married, they're going to ask questions about the spouse as well. So you'll see that it's interactive. It will guide you through it. They did make that part a little bit easier this year. And then you can answer the questions that they ask, and you can give consent to get your financial information retrieved. Okay? What happens when you put all this information in there? So some of the things you're going to enter are going to be, well, income. Hopefully, again, you don't have to enter it. Hopefully, it's going to pull. There's a couple questions about income that you will have to enter, but it's taking, the majority of them is taking the adjusted gross income field from your tax returns. It's taking your taxes paid from your tax returns. And that's going to ask you questions about your family size. Family size is a factor when it determines whether or not you're eligible for financial aid. What it's going to do is it's going to ask you if your information in your tax returns, meaning the parents that are on it, the dependents that are entered, if that is a representation of your household size, then they're going to just say, we'll pull that information from your tax return. You can say yes or no. If the information in your tax return is not the actual household size, or maybe you have less students in your dependents on your tax returns than you have in your house, you can overwrite that. You want to make sure that you're giving yourself the benefit of as many people in your household as you can, regardless of what your tax returns say. So they do give you an option to overwrite that. Now, what they say for household size is anyone that lives with you, where your income as a parent is providing more than 50% of their financial support in the last 12 months. So you could have grandma and grandpa living with you. If you're providing their financial support, they're probably not in your tax returns, but they are in your household. So that's an example where you might want to overrule, change the tax return information and say, yes, I do have more in my household than my tax returns show. So keep that in mind when you're going through it. But again, read the questions. It's really clear. It kind of explains all that to you. It actually explains to you who should be in your household as well. So know that you may not know the answers and just be okay with answering or reading the questions, reading their help file, getting to the bottom line of what they're trying to have you fill in, because again, it's for your benefit. It is going to ask assets as well. This is also for the student. They're going to ask current checking and savings information. They're going to ask if you have investments. As a parent, they're going to ask if you own other property. So you're going to want to have some of that information ready. If you own the house you live in, that is not included. So not your primary home, but if you had a secondary home or if you had a rental property, they're going to want you to enter some of that information in. It does include checking, savings, stocks, bonds, 529 accounts. If the parent is the owner of the 529 account, then it will go into the parent's asset. If the parent has multiple 529 accounts for multiple students, you only have to enter the value that has been designated for the student that you're doing the FAFSA for. That's a change this year that I think parents will like if you've gone through this before. So it's basically entering less assets, so that's nice. And it also is going to ask you questions about whether you own a business or a farm, and it's going to want some of the net worth information about that as well. So all of this information is being entered by you guys. Again, sounds like a lot, but it's not. It's a few questions. It's pulling all this information together and it's doing a calculation. It's coming up with this student aid index. Okay, so then what happens with the student aid index? The student aid index is sent to all the colleges that you have selected inside the FAFSA. The FAFSA has up to 20 colleges that a student can enter. So you can enter a few at once. You could go back later and add more. You can enter 10 and never apply to some of them. That's fine if you're not sure. But you enter in the schools will get an electronic copy of the FAFSA. One of the things that comes from the FAFSA is going to be something directly from the federal government called Federal Pell Grant. So that is a possible grant that you might be eligible for directly from the federal government. The SAI is going to dictate whether or not you're eligible for that Pell Grant. If you are eligible, you'll be eligible at any school that you go to. It's a federal grant. It'll be the same amount at every school that you go to because it's coming from the federal government. The other thing that happens with the SAI is it will go to the colleges, and the colleges will then look at that number and say, okay, you fall into a category where we can give you this scholarship or this grant. So colleges are taking the FAFSA and possibly the CSS profile if they required it, and they're creating some sort of financial aid package. The general idea is that they're going to offer you some scholarships, some grants. The federal government also offers loans. So anybody who does the FAFSA is offered a federal loan option. And all of this is going to be pulled together and it's going to be given to you in a nice little package. Now, every college's package is going to look completely different. Some of the general information will be the same. So this financial aid letter, this financial aid package, it should include a cost figure. So now you're talking about this higher cost number that's like the direct costs. So tuition, housing, meal plans, fees, that's going to be all listed. If you're not applying as a resident, then typically it will be tuition and fees. So be careful of recognizing and paying attention to how you've applied to those colleges and acknowledge and make sure you realize and can see whether that aid package matches what you wanted it to be. You don't want to assume that you're looking at a resident package and ultimately it's only tuition. So you do want to make sure you're understanding what you're looking at. Look for that breakdown of cost. This is an example from Siena. It does not have a breakdown of cost on it. There's some, addendums on the bottom referred to, which you can go look up, and we break down that cost. So every letter is going to look different. Some will have the breakdown, some won't. Make sure you understand what that cost includes, what it covers. And then the next thing they're going to show you is what they're offering. So this is the scholarships, grants, loans. Scholarships are sometimes things like a merit scholarship. So that could be something that's based on GPA from high school. You may have earned a certain merit scholarship. Believe it or not every college offers that though. So you want to find out. You want to see what you're going to get. You can ask ahead of time. You can find out ahead of time. You can ask, what kind of scholarships and grants do you offer? What is the criteria to be able to receive aid from your college? Maybe they have a net price calculator. Every website or every college might have on their website a net price calculator. That is something you could use ahead of time because I mentioned the FAFSA was not available yet, right? So colleges aren't going to provide something like this until they've had your FAFSA and or CSS profile, and they've had your acceptance, right? Your academic admission acceptance. So prior to that, maybe they have a tool called a net price calculator. If they do, and it's robust and it asks a bunch of questions about your income and about your GPA, things like that, you'll be able to see what your estimate might be from that college. They might have a merit scholarship. They might have an early application scholarship. They might have a resident grant. Every college has something different. So you're really going to want to look at everything they give you, read it in detail. They're also going to provide for you, if you are eligible for a federal Pell Grant, it will be on there. If you are eligible for any other type of grant or scholarship offered by the college, it will be on their letter. The other thing we didn't talk about yet is New York State. So New York State is going to also use the FAFSA, and they're going to determine if you're eligible for state aid. State aid can come in a couple different forms as well. One of them is called TAP, Tuition Assistance Program is what it stands for. It's a grant. You might be eligible. It is income-based, so they will use the FAFSA first, and then there is an application you have to fill out separate from the FAFSA. You do have to have a username and a password for it. You can create that anytime now. It is on the HESC website, HESC. So they are hesc.ny.gov. That is New York State aid. So a couple things could come through there. Perhaps your student is eligible for a New York State merit scholarship. That could come through there. But most of the time, the majority, it's TAP, T-A-P. So if your student is eligible for TAP, typically the college is going to include it in their award package. That does not mean it's automatically been approved. At this point in time, this is an estimate, because until you are able to complete the HESC application all the way through and get approval from New York State, which honestly takes a little while, anything you see on any of these award letters is going to be an estimate. So if you see TAP, it means the college thinks you're eligible, but you want to make sure you go do the HESC application. Okay. On their award letter, they're going to show scholarships, grants, federal, state, college. They're also going to include the federal loan. So on this example, this person was eligible for a subsidized loan of $3,500, an unsubsidized loan of $2,000. That is because the federal government offers every freshman $5,500 in a loan. That's it. That's the most, for the most part. There's a couple of scenarios where they might get a little bit more, but typically it's $5,500 for a freshman. And this scenario of $3,500 and $2,000 is the best case scenario. This person was eligible for subsidized. It's a little bit extra kind of benefit for aid because that portion of the loan does not have interest until you graduate. Unsubsidized is going to start charging interest right away. So some students might be eligible for $5,500 unsubsidized. The results of the FAFSA might show that that student is not eligible for the subsidized portion. So unsubsidized for $5,500 could be an option. If you say yes and you want that loan, it helps pay the college, pays part of your bill, and doesn't have to be repaid until after graduation or after attending college. The subsidized portion, like I said, while you're in college, does not have interest accruing. Will have interest once you graduate and start to pay it back. The unsubsidized will start right away. You might see some variation anywhere in between those two, but this is the best case scenario. The government does not allow the whole loan to be subsidized. But subsidized is better than any other loan you're going to find anywhere else, because a private student loan, another type of loan, they're not going to subsidize interest. They're going to start charging you interest. So if you are eligible for the subsidized loan, this is not a bad one to start with. It is in the student's name and there's no cosigner. And typically the interest rate is lower than it would be if you go anywhere else and get any other type of loan. Let's see, second year you'll be offered $6,500 typically, third and fourth years, $7,500 each. So it gradually goes up a little bit. You have to keep doing the FAFSA to be able to receive it each year, but it is something that is available each year. Then these financial aid packages are then going to have some sort of net costs. So I mentioned before, maybe don't shy away from a college from that first larger amount, because this one, for example, is almost $64,000. But this student, as an example, is only going to be paying maybe $33,000 after scholarships and grants. Has the loan to help, so maybe the out-of-pocket then is closer to $28,000. That is a lot different than $64,000. right? So it's something to really consider and let yourself get to the point of receiving this information before you rule out that college, perhaps. It is still very important to have the financial conversation with your students now, though. Have some sort of idea of your costs, have some sort of ballpark. Again, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to know that information from that college right away, but have it be part of the plan, part of the expectation. You don't want to start the process applying to 5, 6 colleges, fall in love with all of them, and find out that maybe some of them are a little out of reach. You also want to have a financial conversation now about who is going to be responsible for that bottom line. There's lots of options out there. So I mentioned that $5,500, that's in the student's name only. So there's a portion that the student is now going to be responsible for. The bottom line, there's lots of different ways you can do that too. So some ways you can pay for that bottom line might be another type of loan. There is a federal Parent Plus loan. That is an option for a parent to go apply for. Now, some colleges will put that right on the award letter. They'll put an amount. Be careful of that. Again, watch the words, pay attention to what you're looking at. Make sure you understand, are they grants, are they scholarships, are they loans? I've seen a lot of schools' letters have the Parent Plus loan already included. However, you do have to go apply for it. It's not an automatic. And it's a loan. So you do have to understand that you can have it deferred while the student is in college, but you still have to pay it back after that. That one is that nature of unsubsidized, so there will be interest accruing. That loan is only in the parent's name. So that's, again, a decision for you as parents, as a family. Do you want that $28,000 in your name only, or do you want your student to be involved? So the other option, if you want the student involved, are more like private student loans. That's going to be a bank, a student loan company. There are lots of options out there. You can usually apply anywhere you want to. You can certainly check in with the colleges that you're interested in and see if they have options, see if they have preferred lenders, something like that. But typically you can go anywhere you want. You would have the scenario where the student could be the borrower and then the parent maybe is just a co-signer. Another advantage of that type might be, what if it's the parent that isn't able to apply? They're not the best person right now or able to have the loan in their name at all. So these private lenders will allow that co-signer to be basically anyone else. It can be anyone, it doesn't have to be a family member. So if it's an aunt or grandparent or family friend that's helping support the student in that loan, that's okay in a private student loan world. It's just not an option in the federal loan world. That's going to have to be a parent only. Another thing you can do is a lot of the colleges will have a payment plan. So a payment plan typically means that you'll be able to pay the school monthly instead of 1 or 2 times a year. Most schools, the billing is usually 1 semester at a time. So if it's a 2-semester school, you're going to get 2 bills, which would be about half each time. A monthly payment plan will give you the option to take, say, $24,000 divided by, say, 12, right, and pay $2,000 a month. That's an option at a lot of schools, but they vary. So you do want to ask those questions if you're interested in that program. Typically, there's no interest on that. Again, you want to ask at each college. Some only have 6 months for the year. Some have 8, some have 12. So you want to check and see if that's an option. The other thing to consider, I think that a lot of families don't think of that is helpful, maybe, is part of it could be in the payment plan and part of it could be a loan. So maybe you're saying, I'm only comfortable with $1,000 a month. So $1,000 a month is $12,000, you still have a balance you need. So maybe then you go get a loan for less. You're not borrowing as much, you're not having as much interest in the long run. So usually you can do a mixture of those 2 things as well. And like I said, the student loan in that scenario with the private lenders allows the student to still be involved. You do want to also certainly consider, this is just 1 year. Most of the award packages they're going to give you are going to be just showing you the first year. They might show you the cost estimate for the future years. It'll be an estimate most likely. Might be a percentage increase every year, something like that. What you want to do is you want to make sure that when you're looking at this award letter, not only are you acknowledging and recognizing that the cost might go up, but you're also finding out, will this aid continue? Which one of these items is automatically guaranteed every year? Or is there a criteria that you need to be aware of to be able to continue receiving that aid? Some colleges will offer, as I mentioned, a merit scholarship. So that might be determined based on your high school GPA. But they might also then require a certain GPA in order to continue receiving it. These are things you want to find out, whether by asking admissions, looking at their fine print, looking at their addendums. Certain of these scholarships or grants, I mentioned the FAFSA. If they're related to the FAFSA because the FAFSA allowed you to be eligible, it might mean that you need to keep doing the FAFSA and also keep remaining eligible financially in order to receive that particular type of aid. So that could mean if your finances change in the future, if your income goes up a little, might you lose some of those scholarships or grants? So those are questions to ask ahead of time so that you're sure you're planning for the whole time. If it's a 2-year school, if it's a 4-year school, if they're thinking about, being a doctor and going on further, try to plan as much as you can ahead of time to at least have an idea of what you're looking at. Okay. Another thing that might be offered is called Federal College Work Study. Every college does this a little differently. You do have to be financially eligible, so the FAFSA plays a part there. You do have to complete a FAFSA or you wouldn't be eligible for the work study, you wouldn't be eligible for the loans. You have to have a FAFSA completed, and then you also have to just financially be eligible. Each school will let you know if you're eligible for it. The amounts will vary, the eligibility will vary, and also how it works varies a little bit. So what it typically means is that a student is eligible to work on campus in a job in one of the departments, let's say, and either earn a paycheck or have it come off their bill. So every college is a little bit different, so make sure you're paying attention. Again, look at how they've presented it, look at the fine print, figure out how the eligibility is determined. This one, for example, the way Siena does it, it does not come off the bill. It is completely separate and additional. It's a different form of aid in that sense. So a student can find a job on campus, work, get a paycheck, use it for anything. It does not go to the bill, but it also doesn't have to go to the bill. So it's a nice little extra amount of money they might be able to earn. But definitely some schools have it deducted immediately or directly from the bill, and some schools will require it, some schools won't require it. So there's lots of different scenarios. So make sure if you're interested in work study and you've been offered work study, that you really understand what it is and how it works. Okay. So what couple things you want to always think of. You want to make sure that you are initially trying to get as much financially as you can, right? We talked about the different ways to do that. FAFSA, CSS profile, college website applications. You want to make sure that you're applying for as much as you possibly can. The other thing that can happen though is when they're using these sources of information, your information may have changed, right? So you may be filling out this FAFSA, it's using 2023's income, and you're thinking, I don't even have that job anymore. I have since changed jobs. Maybe, unfortunately, I've currently lost my job. These are things that cannot be acknowledged directly in the FAFSA, but the government gives colleges the opportunity to review these special circumstances. These are just a couple examples. You might have something very specific and you want to reach out to the colleges. The colleges have the opportunity to say, okay, this FAFSA is not representing your current situation, whether it be income, whether it be medical expenses. Maybe the FAFSA that year of taxes is not reflecting any medical expenses. Since then, you have something that you're paying for regularly. These are things you want the college to acknowledge because the FAFSA didn't, right? You want to make sure you're saying to this college, you're giving me a financial aid package off of information that really isn't accurate or isn't complete or isn't current. So reach out to the colleges, talk to them about it. You do have to go college by college on this. Every college will have a process for it. They'll have an opportunity for it. You just need to ask those questions. Another big one here is this tuition. The government allows colleges to make adjustments to FAFSAs when a family is paying tuition for another sibling, right? Someone else, maybe kindergarten through high school, private high schools, private elementary schools, you're paying a tuition. They do allow the colleges to acknowledge that and make an adjustment to the FAFSA and see if it will help allow you to be eligible for more aid. The new one this year, because of the new FAFSA, is other students in college. Not parents in college, but other students in college. So you have a student in your household who is also attending college already, and your senior who's going to be a freshman is going to be attending the same year, so 25, 26. You can reach out to the college of your soon-to-be freshman's choice, and you can say, hey, I have a sophomore, I have a junior already in college, I'm paying for them as well. The school will have a process for acknowledging that and adjusting for it, and again, determining whether we can offer more aid to your incoming freshmen, to acknowledge the fact that your household income is really paying for more expenses than is represented in the FAFSA. The FAFSA will ask the question, how many are in college? You can enter it, you should enter it, but it does not automatically adjust for it. Used to in the past, doesn't anymore. So now what they've done is said the colleges can adjust for it all individually. So the advantage is still there, it's just something you have to reach out and address with each college. And those are just a couple examples. We encourage you to always talk to the college, always call the admissions office. Some colleges maybe don't have the financial aid conversation ahead of time. Some have it early, some have it later. Sometimes the admissions office can have these conversations with you. But the hardest thing for you to do, I'm sure, is make that call, but it's very important. And think about it as you're taking this opportunity to build a financial aid package for your student right from the start that's going to be as big and as robust as it can possibly be. Because honestly, most colleges don't have more aid as years go on. They might be more looking at it more like, we're going to give you this package now, we're not necessarily going to give you more later. Now, those changes I just talked about, that could be circumstance changes, that can be in the future as well though. So make sure if your student is third year in and then unfortunately lose your job or change your job, you reach out to the college, let them see what they can do to help you with that. Okay, so here's just like a general overview of time, just as an estimate, just to give you something to kind of consider. So around December, sometime, hopefully the FAFSA will become available. If you do complete it in December, hopefully by January-ish, then the colleges are receiving the FAFSAs. And meanwhile, you're applying academically for admission, you're getting accepted around the same time. So between January and March-ish is usually when colleges are able to provide some sort of financial aid package. Then what you're going to want to do is compare them. Probably around the same time frame, your student has narrowed down their search for other reasons, right? You've maybe gone to open houses in the fall, you've gone to personal tours, you've gone to the colleges and sat in on a class or something that really helps your student understand whether this is the right college for them. So maybe their list that started out with 10 and was 10 FAFSAs and 10 applications is now down to 3 or 4. And so those are the financial aid packages that you really care about at this point. Sit down, compare them, make sure you're looking at them line by line, you're making sure you understand what it takes to continue receiving that aid, what the criteria is. We really encourage you to always reach out, talk to someone about it. We would hate for you to think you understand it and then it's not what you thought it was. So have that conversation. Because part of the financial conversation at this stage, February, March-ish, part of it is also, again, about the college. How are you finding the value in that college? You're looking at the cost. Have you determined you know enough about that college to say, yes, this one is well worth this cost? The other thing we also recommend around this time is asking if there's more money. You could say to them, I'm down to 2 or 3, you're more expensive, is there anything else you can give me? Sometimes some colleges will have more. They might call it an appeal, they might call it a reevaluation, but they might have an opportunity where they're saying, you know what, we had this certain amount of money set aside that we were able to give, and we haven't been able to give it all yet. So yeah, we have a little bit more to give. So reach out to the colleges at that point that you're really interested in and make sure they know where you stand, they understand where you're at, and they can try to help you through the next phase. Some things to consider just for when you're thinking about value. There's a lot of statistics out there about all the colleges. If that's something that you're interested in, the colleges themselves will list their statistics, either bright and bold in front of your face because they're good statistics, or maybe buried down another page if they're not, but they should be giving you some of these informations if you're interested, and it can give you an idea of how you could get a feel for how that college does financially, how it does with their students as far as future, such as can they find a job out of college and pay their loans, or is there a very high default rate on loans? That's an example of that one. What is the job placement rate? What is the percentage of students that leave that college and are employed within a certain amount of time? Those are just some little things that you could look into if you wanted to. We cannot say enough how much we really encourage visiting. March, April becomes a really big visit month. It's a really good time to just get that second look, the third look, find out how you feel about being on that campus, and sit down with a financial person and really talk through it. that's a good time to really say, okay, now I really need to understand better, what are my loan options? What can I do? What does my situation look like? Okay, so this, if you want to scan it, hopefully we'll provide you with an electronic version of the slideshow. Hopefully, it hasn't been working every time, so hopefully. We are having a financial aid video chat on January 21st. Again, if you're interested in just finding out a little bit more, especially if you've applied to Siena, but not only, please reach out anytime. And then also I gave you my email, but I'll give it again. So it's Furlong, AFURLONG @siena.edu. I'm open to any questions anytime. I know some of these questions are hard to talk about in certain settings, so I'd be happy to talk to you about it more personally if you have questions. That's all I have for here.
Well, thank you, Alicia. We actually do not have any questions yet in the chat, so you must have done. Oh wait,
There's
one just
popped up.
When is the TAP application available?
Yep, good question. Thank you for saying that because I did forget to say that. So I think technically it's available now. However, if it's like last year, so normally, in normal years, you could do the FAFSA and at the end, you can then go do the TAP application. There's usually an option for you to click on it. It'll bring you right over to the TAP application. The FAFSA is required for HESC to approve the TAP application. Last year, because they were changing the FAFSA, the connection wasn't there. So any student who did the TAP application prior to the FAFSA did wait and hold for about 45 days. After that, they deleted the application from HESC and they had to do it over again. So to be honest with you, I would say at this point, I would not suggest doing the HESC application, the TAP application yet. I feel like you should wait until after you do the FAFSA. However, it is available, so you can certainly go create your user account. Again, there's a different HESC username and PIN, different than the FAFSA. You can do that. You can get started. You can get a feel for what it might look like. You certainly can apply. My experience this past year has been that a lot of students lost their applications as a result. So maybe FAFSA first, then HESC.
Thank you. Also, the QR code that is up is sending to a page not found.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You
Can we
can send it to me.
Yep, I was just saying,
and
can we get that out to them? Yeah, sorry about
So
that.
Alicia will send that to guidance tomorrow, and the guidance office will make it available. I'll get it out on our social media.
Thanks.
Any other questions out there?
Trying to think if there's anything else I can mention.
This will be available on our YouTube channel. So even if you were not able to watch right now, you will be able to revisit this presentation. And as Alicia mentioned, please feel free to either reach out to Siena directly. They have been such a huge friend to the Averill Park community. We're so appreciative of them.
Pleasure.
But also feel free to reach out to your son or daughter's counselor, okay? And we will make sure that we can get you in touch with the right people or help you answer some of those questions too. We appreciate everyone being here, and we hope you have a great night. Thank you so much, Alicia.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Take care.
Alicia.
No problem, thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna shut that down.